Hey everyone, it's your training team and Kat with Care Coordination Support and Anna with the Living Well grant. We're all here to support you all today and to go over lots of awesome harmony information. So, before we get going too far on that, we are expecting a guest speaker. And there's quite a few folks trickling into this session. So we're just kind of slowly starting the info share. We did want to thank you all for those of you that participated in Full Lives, um, using the Academy to participate in that. Kara, did you have anything you wanted to say about the engagement or what people are experiencing with using the Academy?
Sure. Thanks, Delight. So yeah, it's been great. I'm so glad that you've all been wonderful about accessing the Academy in general. And then to access it for our SDS Training Academy for the full lives for those of us who are care coordinators at 2 years or more for recertification training, and any care coordinator for the care coordination 16 hours CEH. Just some tips. Most folks have gotten it, but you have two websites that you'll go to. One of them is going to be the Blackboard site. That's actually for the Full Lives materials and the Full Lives recordings and things like that. So you'll go there and you'll check those out. They are available. If you have trouble accessing the Blackboard site, we can point you to their admin support. Just email us at sdstraining@alaska.gov. And they'll get you in. It seems like some of us have multiple logins, as a heads up. So don't be surprised if you go in there and it's not obvious how to get to your recordings. But when you look at your recordings and enjoy those, and then you go over to the Training Academy, SDS Training Academy, which is it's going to be sdstraining.ethinksites.com, and go into your account, and you'll see two things in there. You'll see a certificate that you can download, and you can see the renewal training. The renewal training is a quiz and a little forum where you can go in there and you can make comments and engage with each other. It's going to be available. Well, it is available May 1st to the 15th, and we're going to go in and grade your quiz answers, and then send you your certificate. So if you don't get a certificate right away, don't worry. We're just gonna, we just have to go in and grade everybody and let them, send them out to you. So we're practicing notifying you through the Academy. It's going really good, and we're so happy that it is that way. Um, Most of us have made an account on the Academy, and that is great. If you do need to make an account still, you can always go to sdstraining.ethinksites.com and make an account. But anyway, we'll help you if you get stuck. sdstraining@alaska.gov is how to get a hold of us. That's about it. Thank you.
There's a couple of questions in the chat about Full Lives, and the first one is, can you access the virtual Full Lives conference if you missed the in-person option? Well, unfortunately, if you didn't register and pay to participate, that ship has sailed. So you're kind of out of luck in participating in the 2023 Full Lives. But next year, you can always participate. So that will let you know in advance of the different, of when it's happening and how we're trying to set up virtual engagement. We've continuously gotten feedback that the virtual engagement, even if it's recordings, is helpful for our care coordinators because of, well, you guys have a lot of things to manage, and so it just makes it a little bit more accessible for you. So we're continuing to hold that feedback in the committee and participate in that sense. We have a couple more questions I see, and one of them is that having difficulty accessing Blackboard and couldn't get the assignment in the academy. So let's just make sure we're really clear, just to sum up where we are in this process. You do have a Blackboard account that you use to register for the conference. And if you're having problems getting into it, you would contact their help desk. And maybe, Carol, could you put their help desk info into the chat for the UA folks? They'll help you look at the videos. So that's one side of it. The other side is the academy, which is how SDS is going to give you your CEH credits, and if you qualify, the renewal training certificate. You may have gotten an auto emailed certificate being like, you went to Full Lives. That's not what certification is going to be looking for. The certification, our PCC team is going to be looking for the certificate that comes from SDS to qualify for the Full Lives CEHs and the Full Lives renewal training. So those are some of the big ones. Let me see. I think that covers it for most of your questions. If you have other questions or difficulty in accessing the trainings from Full Lives, reach out to the UA system. If you have issues in accessing the training through SDS, contact SDS training. I see we have Tony. Hi, Tony. Welcome to CC Info Share.
Thanks, Delight. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I apologize for being late. A little trouble logging in.
I've had that experience as well, so it's not unique to you. I have had the same problem. We were just catching people up on Full Lives. You were there and one of our speakers, weren't you? Did you have a good time at Full Lives?
Sure. No, it was a wonderful reception, and I really appreciated the invite and being able to meet so many people. It was great. It was great. It still feels nice and new to be in person. So I really appreciated that. Yeah. So Delight, I know we want to talk about planned services a little bit, but I thought I would just update people on just some big picture things underway right now with regard to the division with the legislative session, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we'd love to know more, especially since the legislation's at the home stretch.
Yeah, how many folks are on? I don't see a head count or anything like that.
We have 76 care coordinators.
Holy smokes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No pressure, Tony, no pressure, just
We're among friends, it's okay.
Yeah, well, I thought I would give you an update, like I said, on some of what's been happening down here in Juneau. I talked about some of these things at the Full Lives Conference, so maybe I have a little bit more by way of update. It's been a busy session for SDS, far busier than last year or the year before. As many of you know, last year the legislature requested a report on what it would take to eliminate the IDD waitlist. They wanted to know what it would cost and what we would have to do to make that happen. The legislature asked me to make a couple of presentations about the report that we submitted to them. And I think it would be safe to say that the several million dollars that it would take to truly eliminate the IDD waitlist, bring services to everybody who's waiting, is beyond what everybody has the stomach to pay for right now. But stakeholders and legislators read the report pretty carefully, and they saw that there was something that could be done with a relatively small amount of funding. So deep in the report, we talk about how we would like to, that as a first step in eliminating the wait list, we would want to we would want to change our assessment process, update our assessment process to be a cost allocation, to allow cost allocation. That is for people to be able to be assigned a budget and then be able to spend their budget in a way that's more person-centered. So there is money right now in the budget bill that's being entertained by both the House and the Senate that would allow SDS to do that. You've heard of the INRI assessment suite, and that's money that would allow SDS to adopt that assessment suite to do get the contracts we would need to help with a little staff support and make that happen. Right now, the House and the Senate have slightly different versions of how they would support that effort. And before the session ends, they're going to have to meet up and marry their language so that it reads identically. But it looks really promising for the division to be able to finally, after many years of wanting to upgrade its assessment process, to be able to do that. So that's something that I'm watching real eagerly to see how that's going to work out. I'm answering lots of questions that staffers and legislators have about that. The governor, in his original budget, had requested an additional $1.5 million for grants and money for the Centers for Independent Living. That's still in there, so that's looking good that it'll get support this year. And I know that the Senate right now is the budget is in the hands of the Senate, and they have taken what the House has done to the budget and they are working it over. And the Senate right now is entertaining language on an additional rate bump for home and community-based services, similar to what they did last year when they enabled the division to increase rates by 10%. Stakeholders have managed to convince the legislature that the work there isn't done, and so there are at least some people in the legislature who are entertaining the idea that yet another significant rate bump, in addition to the rate increases that went into effect yesterday, need to happen. So that's something that I am also watching carefully. It's $30 million in increases, which would be a split between federal and state funds right now. And whether it'll be $30 million by the time they're done negotiating, whether it'll be something less, whether it'll be $0, I'm not sure. I'm not able to participate in any advocacy on that, but I'm certainly watching it with great interest. So that's what's going on with the budget. And in terms of actual bills, that's also been busy. The adult home care bill, which creates a new type of licensed residential setting, which we would call an adult care home, and accompanied by a service called adult home care, is just passed out of the House Finance Committee. It's already been through the entire Senate. And we are hoping that on Friday or maybe Monday, it's going to get a vote on the House and on the House floor and then be passed into law. An interesting thing happened on the Senate floor, if you find politics interesting. Senator Kathy Giesel has had a bill, Senate Bill 106, that would allow legally responsible individuals to be able to provide community first choice personal care services permanently. That's been a flexibility that we've allowed under the pandemic. Senator Giesel's bill would require that the division allow it on a permanent basis. She took basically the substance of her bill and inserted it into the adult home care bill with the governor's approval. So now we have one bill that kind of does two different things. It launches the adult home care service and setting, and it also requires the department to allow legally responsible individuals to continue to provide personal care services. We would need to develop a regulation, personal care services under the Community First Choice Program, under the 1915K option. So the flexibility that has allowed that is still going to come to an end on May 11th. As soon as the session ends, we are going to be going out to you, our stakeholders, and asking for your input about what the regulations around that would look like. So legally responsible individuals providing personal care under Community First Choice would have to go through the regulatory process to allow it to be in place. So stay tuned for that. If that goes through, which looks really good that it will, I'll probably host a webinar where we talk about the legislation and and we would want to solicit your ideas on what the regulations around allowing that should look like. All right. I know that the main point for my coming here today was to talk about the cost of support plan overview and the changes we made there. I'm actually going to turn most of that walkthrough over to Kat. But I wanted to say before I do that the reason we were able to make those changes is thanks to you. SDS heard the concerns from care coordinators many times. We valued that input. Kat, again and again, when we wanted to make changes, it was a difficult one. We really had to work carefully with our systems people. We wanted to take your input, but we also needed to do what the department, especially our partners at Public Assistance, needed from that information. So I just really thank Kat for keeping this need that you have presented to us on our radar and continuing to come back until we were able to make a change, which we hope will make your work a little bit easier. And I wanted to say that I'll want to continue to open to hearing your ideas for improvements we need to make. So with that, Kat, do you want to just give an overview about plan services and the changes there?
Sure, I can do that, and I can't take all the credit because Delight and training team and other SDS folks were a part of kind of this push and this work and the quick turnaround. I think we're gonna go over kind of what we changed in detail when we go over the new guide. So we updated the T24 guide, which is the guide that the care coordinators use to do all the harmony tasks. And this is one of the chapters in there, so we could kind of keep things in order. And I think Delight's gonna do that part when we go over it. But we do have a video made, we have instructions, and we have been seeing care coordinators use this new process. I think there's still some confusion around kind of who does what part, but it's been working so far. It's been about a week that we've had that. So I think it's a good change, and I think we're gonna see some other improvements coming from that. But I don't know if there's any questions for you, Tony, before you go. Just gonna take a quick look.
I'm happy to stick around for a little bit longer and see if there's questions for me.
We're just
I can't see them, by the way, Delight.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm just looking in the wrong place.
We're gonna look through there. That's why there's a team here.
There were quite a few questions, and guys, thank you so much for putting them in. We're going to give them all to Tony at the end, but we'll paraphrase them for now because some of you wrote really in-depth questions, and I don't want to miss the mark on them or diminish them in any way. So, we're kind of collecting the themes of the questions that you have so that Tony can speak to them, and then we'll give him your detailed questions after the session. But the first questions that we kind of hit on were regarding the waitlist and the change to the assessment process. And the question kind of was there were several questions geared towards what assessment process is SDS looking at, and how is it going to be more person-centered, if we have an idea of that process of where we're going with that.
Yeah, the assessment tool that we have been looking at for years, actually over a decade, is the Interi assessment suite. And maybe you got to participate in the AADD webinar where the authors of that tool got to describe it a little bit. It would be the beauty of it would be an internationally used tool that comes with a standardized training, standardized use that would allow us to then talk about adopting a budget allocation process where people, according to their needs, could be grouped into tiers based on their service need. And then that makes it easier for us to talk about enhancing our flexibilities of service. It makes it easier to talk about allowing people to do more self-direction, because they would be, assigned a tier that would allow them to see how much they could spend, and then work with their care coordinators, work with their families to determine what the better service mix would be for them. So maybe you've heard also the Advancing States, which is the national group of state SDS agencies around the country, has an initiative called Advancing the NRI, where they are stepping up their support for state systems that would like to explore the use of this tool. So there's a lot of national interest in making the NRI more widely available. And Delight, I don't know if you could do this, but a lot of people get confused by the spelling of NRI. And if it's possible to enter it into the chat somewhere, yeah, there we go. It's it's Inter with a capital RAI.
Yeah, correct me, because I'm terrible at this. So please, I'm terrible at remembering the acronyms. So thank you.
So they have a great website and a lot of information, and it would probably do better justice to explaining the various ways it works than I could. But just so you are aware, that's the tool that we're focused on. That's the tool that the legislature is interested in seeing, and they call it in the budget. They call it the cost allocation tool, and the various things that it would do in terms of upgrading our assessment process, while not eliminating the wait list. Again, we would need tens of millions of dollars to actually eliminate the wait list by taking people off and getting services to them and making them available to them. But what it does is it better positions us to be able to know what, to have more refinement in terms of what costs are. And then that would allow the legislature to then maybe come back after we've implemented it and have it in place to say, wow, so maybe we could, what if we were to give you $5 million? What would that enable you to do as far as reducing the size of the wait list? If that makes sense. So that's why I think the stakeholders like AADD and Key Coalition, they really kind of glommed on to that piece of the waitlist elimination plan and said, well, if you can't do eliminate the whole thing, at least you could point the division in a better direction to be able to eliminate the waitlist. So we're really grateful. We've wanted to implement the NRI long before I came here, but we just lacked the resources to be able to do it. And so the legislature seems poised to be able to give us those resources right now.
Awesome. The next kind of theme that came up was about your update regarding rates, and the kind of questions that came up on this is care coordination going to be included in the rates that the legislature is looking at when they're exploring? And then the follow-up is there an increase still scheduled for July 1? So kind of the two main themes of that time.
Yeah, thanks. As far as I know, and it is dependent on the budget situation, but the regulations that require us to do a July 1st inflationary increase are still in place, and there is no intention to not do that. There have been years where the commissioner has stepped in because there were budget shortfalls, and the commissioner has stepped in and said, we are going to actively prevent the inflationary increases from automatically going into place. That has not occurred yet, and there's no talk of that. So I have every reason to believe that, yes, the inflationary increases that are due to happen on July 1st will happen. You know, I was asked to review the Senate language on the increase in rates that's in there right now, and I suggested to them that they make sure that the language is inclusive of all the entire spectrum of SDS services, from care coordination through the actual rates. And I was furiously trying to see if that language was updated, because right now it said something kind of wonky. It said it said that these rate increases would go toward developmental disability services and personal care services. And I pointed out to them that there's really not a developmental disability service. You need to be more expansive in the language. You need to be more descriptive in the language, because right now it's kind of not really workable. So I might be able to check before I get off the call today to see if that update, that recommended update to the language has been made. I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned that they will make that change, though. If the language is wonky now, the language was wonky last year. Last year, the language said something like, this 10% increase is to fund personal care services. And we explained to them that that wasn't good enough, and they made the change. And that's why care coordinators were able to get that 10% increase, along with waiver services, right? Along with personal care services and community first choice services. So I feel pretty good that they will take our advice on how to make that language better so that it is indeed inclusive of care coordination. I'm not quite sure if it's been done yet, but I am pretty confident that they will make that change. And I need to emphasize, that's something the Senate has proposed. The House needs to agree to that, and then the governor needs to sign it. So it's still a long way off, but I just wanted to report that advocates for continuing to increase the rates have been effective, at least with the Senate, and we'll see if the House and the governor concur as they go. So it's a long way off. It's a long journey ahead, I should say.
Well, thank you for really keeping the language in check and following it, because it is very, very tricky detail. So thank you for doing that. The kind of next themes that we have are related to legally responsible paid providers. And you said that you were interested in having kind of a discussion group with it. So maybe that's a better venue for those questions, but it's up to you. There's a lot of different questions regarding, does this apply to children? Will this only apply to CFC, but not to like waivers? And there's a lot of that's a lot of the themes that we're seeing in the chat, a lot of questions about that.
Okay, those are great questions. Yeah, so right now, as I'll sort of just set the table again. Right now, our regulations say that legally responsible individuals, and in the regulation, they're defined as a spouse of a recipient, the minor child of a recipient, and a legally responsible individual, which is meant to understood a guardian, are not allowed to be reimbursed to be reimbursed to either provide state plan personal care or community first choice personal care, or really any community first choice program, or waivers. And as you know, under the public health emergency, we lifted that prohibition. And one thing we've learned, though, as the public health emergency has wound down, is that for state plan personal care, that's something that CMS feels very strongly about, that legally responsible individuals not be allowed to provide state plan personal care. But they are more flexible about community first choice personal care. And waivers are a different matter altogether. They are also complicated. So Senator Giesel was approached by the Service Employees International Union in particular. For whatever reason, they wanted to see the possibility of the legally responsible individuals at least be able to be reimbursed to provide care under CFC personal care services. So that's what the bill does. It's strictly limited to that relatively small group of people, those receiving personal care through the Community First Choice program. Maybe down the road, we will try and work our 1915C waivers to be able to also have that flexibility. Maybe down the road, CMS will open up the possibility for state plan personal care. But right now, the easiest path by far is through the Community First Choice program. And so when and if that bill passes, I have committed on the record. I mean, when I've talked about this bill in the legislature, I have said we will seek input from people on the kinds of guardrails we need to put up to make sure when we change our regulations that we do that in a safe and responsible manner. Some of you know, because some of you participated in it, that we surveyed providers in February and March on whether providers have used that flexibility, where they've used it, how much they've used it, and how and what kind of things they would like to see that flexibility, if it were maintained, what kind of things we need to be cautious about. And so that was really great information. We learned that flexibility was used. It wasn't used as much as I might have guessed it would be, but several providers got back to us and said, yes, because we were unable to find care providers for other people, we have turned to legally responsible individuals. There was a lot of enthusiasm toward allowing that to be maintained permanently. And but there was also some concern. Many providers said you need to put up guardrails. You need to only allow it when no other care providers are available. That maybe that's the only way that flexibility ought to be allowed. Some people said allow it, but only if the individual who's providing it is not financially responsible for the person. Provide it, but make sure we're setting up some sort of guardrails that ensure that the individual is able to maintain the choices they want. One of the concerns I hear often is, you know, if you have a parent who wants to become the paid caregiver for their child, what kind of choice does the child have about that? Maybe the child would rather have somebody who's a stranger providing that personal care. I know my own father, for instance, he's got a daughter who's ready and willing to provide help him with personal needs, like going to the bathroom and showering. He doesn't want her to do that. He would rather have a stranger do that. How do you preserve recipient choice when there might be family pressure to do something else? That's the kind of thing we want to care for. So once the bill passes, and before we set pen to paper and start writing the regulations for that, we are going to do a webinar. Maybe I'll come to another forum like this where I can maybe put up a brief slideshow and talk about the bill and gather your input. We want to just make sure we're gathering input and then putting a good regulations package together, which you would also be able to comment on just through the normal public comment process. So I hope that spells out kind of the vision I have for what we would do with that bill once it passes and why it's limited to just community first choice personal care at this time.
Thanks so much, Tony. That really does kind of cover some of the broader themes that we have. And if we didn't get to some of the themes or questions that you put into the chat, don't feel like we skipped it. It's just that we have a lot to cover today, and Tony's going to get all of your questions and comments and everything, can look over them later. And a lot of these conversations are works in progress. And so there'll be plenty of opportunities to continue to work with SDS, especially on these different themes. So was there anything else you wanted to kind of touch base on, Tony, before we switch gears into Harmony World?
No, Delight, thank you. You do a terrific job, I think, of moderating, and I'm just grateful for the work that care coordinators do. I've been with every introduction to the adult home care bill that I've made this session, I've taken care to state to the legislature how much we value the work of care coordinators specifically, as well as our other providers. So I mean that sincerely, and I thank you for letting me spend a little time with you today.
And feel free to stick around, Tony, if you have time. I know you have a.
I'll listen to. I'll listen to a bit more before I go.
All right. Well, thanks for stopping in and sticking around because it's going to get, I don't want to say that Harmony's boring, but we got a lot of information to cover that isn't as
Gonna get
spicy as
technical,
the
not boring.
legislature.
Technical.
Yeah, it's not as interesting as politics, at least to me. But let's get into this huge guide that you received. Why is it so big? Well, it's kind of collection of things that have happened and things that are going to be happening from December to June 1st. So we've done a lot of it's a compilation of all of these supplemental guides that you have been receiving over the past couple of months, and it's a lot of different tweaks to different areas that we have been working with you on. So the first one to just kind of, and I'm just going to go through the summary first and talk through the different summary of changes. And if you have questions as I talk through them, put them in the chat and Kat can stop me to clarify. We are going to do some demonstration though today and explore demonstrating some pieces in Harmony, okay? So don't worry, we'll go look at some stuff too. So for the inquiry, we did make some minor adjustments to how the list view looks in Harmony so that it includes the inquiry ID number. And we did update the language of the guide to reference the PCI and that you only have access to the PCI once your inquiry has been processed and you have access to the person's record. From there, you can search for the PCI. The big thing to know is that your application will be denied or considered incomplete if you don't have the PCI in place. So it's a good idea once you get access to your client's record in Harmony to check that the PCI has been submitted prior to turning in an application. The next big the next change that we made in the guide was about MERP. Remember when Molly and Joanna came and visited us and then we did like a MERP FAQ? Well, we updated some of the language in the guide for that as well so that that was included. Then we come to this word merge, and that's really a lot of chapter 4, 5, and 6, and some other areas in Harmony where we took out the process of running the report for the word merge or the report for the cost of support plan, and you now do the word merge for the cost of support plan. It looks the same. You still add plan services. Really, the only big change here is that you no longer have to think about rate changes when you're adding plan services, and you no longer have to turn in the cost of summary with most of these actions. There is one time when you don't have to, but most of the time you don't have to turn it in because it's a draft, really. You can use it as a planning tool with planning teams, but you get the final version of the cost of summary when the plan's been approved and all of the adjustments have been made to the service units. And that's what you circulate to all the parties and your Alaskans so that they have the authorized amount. And we're kind of doing some version control of not having all of these various versions, and it helps be able to inform our partners at DPA of the different of what the final approved total units are. So you can see that the initial plan and the amended plan and the renewal plan all have those language changes. And we're going to demonstrate it. Don't worry, we're going to demonstrate it when we talk about provider biller changes, okay? So the other big thing that's happening, and it's happening so soon, it's why we're putting it in this guide and taking things out of the guide, is that the short form is going to be active here. And so in anticipation of that, we have removed the AppK instructions and the transitional amendment instructions. You still have access to your old guide, so if you need those instructions between now and July 1st, you still have them. Or if you're in a pinch, just come to office hours and we will help you turn in your App K or transitional amendment. But those have a sunset of July 1st, or well, I should technically, like it's like June 31st would be like June 30th. Sorry, like my dates are not one of those people that got those calendar dates memorized. But June 30th will be that end, and July 1st is the start of the short form. Well, we know that you're starting to meet with teams now, so we needed to get these instructions to you. We are planning on releasing a video on the short form in the next week. So you have a video tool that you can reference at any non-standard business time that you want. And if you need any assistance, you can always reach out to us. So that takes us all the way through to chapter 8. We did have a small adjustment to the late plan form. So one of those small adjustments is that there's now a required field. So it's like the red star in Harmony. The red star in Harmony has been added to one of the fields in that form. And we also wanted just to remind you that the late form isn't just for initials or renewals, it's also for if you have an amendment. So if you've turned in an amendment outside, if it's past 10 days past the change, like you're like a month after the change or something way late, you do need to submit this form with your amendment. So that might be news to some of you, okay? So just kind of keeping that in mind. I did touch base on the short form, but what I really want to walk through is this change in provider billing number only. Why would I want to talk about this one? Well, it's really, really specific on when you can use it. And so I really wanted to take some time to talk to you about it and demonstrate it so that we can also demonstrate this new word merge. We can do both at the same time. Before we move into that, I just also wanted to acknowledge that there's been a change to the CFC processes, and we've changed a note type. There's been some confusion, and it is completely understandable why it's been confusing. There's been a consumer note that's like from the notes tab that's called a plan note, which is different than a note in the plan. So we changed it to make sense. So that note, when you're amending the CFC service plan for PCS services, has been changed to amendment to service plan. So if you're needing to amend the service plan, you're going to use the note that says amendment to service plan. So hopefully that's a little bit more clear for you guys. We recognize that wasn't as clear as what it could be, and we got some great feedback from all of you on how we could make that a little bit more functional. The PCS side of your partners and PCS agencies have the same change to their processes. So if you talk with them, they have had the same change, and their guide has also been updated. Okay, so that's the big piece. I touched everything else, talked about the removal of the app K, and I'm going to now pull up Harmony. With the last few minutes that we have, I do want to just kind of bring it up so that we can kind of before we do, I do want to just kind of talk about the guide. I'm going to show you the guide. So this is like the latest and greatest. And I wanted to show it to you just to draw your attention that these parameters for use of using this tool are outlined, and you should refer to it when you have this kind of situation. Well, what is the provider billing number change only? It's when one of your providers' location is branching. For whatever reason, they're splitting out their location and they were one number and now they're many numbers. The other time that you might use this is if you have a provider where they have a nominal change to their business license certification, agency number, tax ID number, and it just results in a billing, it changes their billing number. So one number is replaced by another. So those are the scenarios. Out of many, or out of one Medicaid, one billing ID number, there are now many, or it's like a swap, like we're just changing the number because the provider's changing, they have some change to the work. You can use this process if you have that, though, either of those situations, and there's no change to the client services. Okay, so that's the really most important piece here. They're not moving, the owner isn't changing, and the rules of the house aren't changing. We're not asking for more or less or anything like that. It's literally just a billing number change. That's the parameters for use for this particular process. So with that in mind, it's really important for you to realize that any other circumstance would require a full amendment, okay? Full amendment for everything else. So what exactly is different about this process than anything else? You're going to turn in something that's very similar to what you've done for AppKs and short forms. You're really just going to turn in a plan with an attachment, and that attachment is the word merge. That's it. So let's do it. Oh no, have you guys had this happen to you? When you get locked out, it's expired. Wasn't keeping my windows active, timed out. Good thing I saved my work. I've had that happen to me before. So just give me a moment here, and while I'm getting this booted up, Kat, is there any big questions that you have in the chat right now?
No, there's some case specific questions where I had responded to a few folks saying, email me with the Harmony ID and I'll take a look. There's some really specific questions. There's one good comment, I guess a suggestion about making sure that the providers are aware of this change. And I did say in my response that there was the e-alert that talks about it. We have provider office hours and we will have a provider info share coming up. We'll also mention this, but if if a provider is giving you a hard time about it or something like that is happening, just reach out to us and we'll follow up as needed. But that was really the only kind of a general question comment on that one.
That's great. And we will have to talk about these changes, especially the word merge and the provider info share. We're going to do that because we know that there have been instances where there's just like confusion about signing and all sorts of stuff. So we are intending to spend some time to educate on that. So here I am in a test case, test. This is all fake. If you see names and stuff all scrambled about, it's because we just mess with this case all the time. The big thing to remember about this is you're going to duplicate the most recent plan that you have. So doing that, I went to the Plans tab, and I'm going to select the most recent amendment that I have. From doing that, I'll be moving up to the File menu and clicking the Duplicate link up there at the top. This opens up. It tells us we did it, we duplicated it. So I'm not changing my plan dates, and you'll have to forgive me. I don't remember what my fake case dates are, so we're just going to keep it simple, okay? But well, it might make it a little hard. We'll see what happens. The big thing that we have to make sure that we accomplish here is that we change our plan type to provider billing change only. That's really what we're targeting on this particular page, okay? And from there, I'm going to file and save this plan. It asks me, like, how do you want to save it? Do you want to save it and change all the dates? yes, no, or cancel. In this case, because you're an amendment and you don't need to change anything, hit no and keep moving. So from here, the next area we'd go to is planned services, and we'd make that adjustment. We would end whichever provider we need to. Let's just say it's the care. Well, we'll just grab one of them. We're not going to worry too much about it, and we're going to end it. We put in the date that it ends, the total unit that it ends. Okay, so you put in your end date and your total units. You talk to the provider and say, like, what's the stop here, okay? And go from there. Once you've made that adjustment, so let's go ahead and say, oh, I'm ending it like we did in November. We'll just say that it's December. And I have a feeling it's going to give me some guff. Let's see. Why would it give me trouble? Anybody remember what, like, if you can get this right, you get a gold star? Anyone know? Oh, it took it. Did it? Save and close. Oh, we'll describe weekly frequency and duration. If you put that in the chat, then you get a half gold star, because
Yeah,
that wasn't
somebody
really
said
what I
you
was worried
didn't fill out all the required fields.
about. Oh, that's it. So I'm gonna try again. I think it's gonna give me an issue. Have you ever seen this before? What's it saying? I'm gonna scoot in a little bit. It's saying the plan service start and end date must occur within the plan start date and end date. Remember how I said I don't remember the dates, and I was like, whatever, it's not a big deal. Turns out it is a big deal, and it just won't work if you don't do that. So that's good to know. We're not going to worry too much about it. You get the idea, right? You have to end the provider and then add a new provider. Now, that sounds so simple, but there is like a situation that can go wrong here. Kat, what happens is, like, like, there are times when you just can't find them. Like, you end it and then you try to find them and you can't. Why would that be?
So we've seen there's a certification issue maybe where the provider is certified on a certain day but not enrolled until a later date. And you're putting, the start date as 11/28, but they really weren't certified until 12/1. I'm sorry, enrolled until 12/1 to bill. That's probably the most common one that comes up.
So remember, and you guys, you're certified providers. There's a lot of different people in play here. So we have Conduit, we have PCC. And so when you're talking to the provider, they may tell you, like, I'm good at this date, but really they're only good with one of the many branches that they have to be good with. So you won't find them until they are active. And then the flip of that is that you may have to find out the certification date that their old number was active too. So that discontinuation point. And that's the trickiest part of this whole process. Like, when does your provider billing number change? What's the date? And that's really what you'll probably have the most difficulty in finding. Once you've done that and you've figured it out and you've written it down, you're actually going to go and just run a word merge. So that's in plan information. Up in the word merge menu, I'll hit cost of support plan word merge, and it takes me to a preview window, and it does a forced download of a Word document. You can use that for planning. It doesn't matter. Remember, like, SDS is doing the final version one, so that's, it's okay. I recommend using this download button or the print button to get a PDF version, because then that's one less step you have to really work on, right? So you'd grab that and then you'd move over to, oh no, I lost my spot. What do? I actually hover over my Chrome window and pick up where I left off. I move down to plan notes. I'm going to file, add a note, and we're going to add the plan note, plan attachments. We'll put in this description, provider, billing change only. And then in this case, I'm just going to say, could not find the provider. And you know what? It's okay to do that. It's okay to put that in. And then from there, you would add the attachment of your word merge, which you've seen me do before. I'm just trying to get through the end here. And turn this to submit, save and close. We go up to our plan information and we'd save it in a submitted status. So why did we demonstrate this one? We wanted you to see how that word merge rolled, and we also wanted to just have a talk with you about how conditional the use is here. Like, you really have limited times when you would use this. The big ones is that nothing's changing for the client, nothing's changing as far as services. It's really a matter of the numbers shifting. And the other reason why we wanted to demonstrate this is the only time that you would turn in the word merge form. This is it. Like, the rest of the time, you don't have to. Okay? So that's really the Harmony update that we had. Please stay tuned for the short form video that we're putting together for you so that you can use that and have that as a tool for June. But other than that, I have covered all that I was going to cover for you guys. I can pull up the agenda. We have 3 minutes left. I think some of the big things, like Kara, and kind of on this home stretch, we
Sure.
wanted to make sure you all checked in on the e-alerts, but did you want to just give them the talk of what's coming?
Yeah, just a quick reminder about the e-alert about cost overview, and that there is an instructional video on how to work with that. It's been pretty great. People have accessed it. And before I talk about new courses coming in our academy, for those of us who are enrolled in the Care Coordinator, the Full Lives 2023 Care Coordinator Renewal Training, just a reminder that you have to complete the forum activity before you'll get to the quiz questions. So, once you enter a topic and respond to somebody else's topic, then you'll be able to move on to the questions, and you can complete the quiz. You could repeat it if, you could take it again if you need to. Then we'll grade it. So you won't get the certificate right away, but we are grading them, and you'll get the certificate right after we grade it. All right, so give us time. It's available the 1st to the 15th of May. So for sure, everybody will have their results shortly after the 15th, if not before. So we have some new courses in development in our academy. CFC training is coming. 3 sections. One will be just the basics, so what we already know to be true about CFC and the law, what it's for, things like that, and who it's for. And then introduction to the services in CFC. And then finally, how to request changes for a care coordinator to know how to work with CFC in Harmony. Certification process, our new certification regulations. We'll be explaining that, for which you will receive a continuing education hour in our course. We'll have a restrictive interventions course. We'll have training specific to post-public health emergency to address ongoing flexibilities made permanent and effective regulations that are 6 months, that start 6 months after the end of the public health emergency, which would be November 11th. So care coordination regulations, and the newness of that would be the permanency of distance telehealth modality visits, and basically that's the flexibility made permanent. But then the periodicity or of required amount of face-to-face visits. So those things are different. So we're putting a course together about that. In all of these, we'll have a part 1, which is general information, and part 2 is for the program admin. So it's really 2 courses in one. Dehabilitation, that would be where the new DayHab regs include a telehealth modality option for a limited percentage of the service. So we'll include that. And the review of dehabilitation regulations under the new regs, which come effective November 11th, about specifically requesting above the DayHab amount or above the cap. So there's guidance in the regulation around that, and that'll be in our training too. And then supported employment, and there's a few changes in supported employment. I believe one of them is the availability for telehealth modality, along with some review changes that are depicted in the regs. So after November 11th, so I'll have those ready. And then care calendar. A lot of us have done a care coordinator, for example, a care calendar for an acuity request. So we'll be explaining how to work with a care calendar. What is it? What are the circumstances, and who fills out what, and how to successfully complete one. So that's it. We're 2 minutes over. Yeah, thanks everybody for being here. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. As always, we'll have a recording available for you. We'll go ahead and close the session. You can click out when you're comfortable. Thanks again for all your questions. They're never lost in the ether here. We do actually submit them. We'll submit all your questions to Tony so we can be more accurate with our further outreach regarding all the changes that he talked about. And we hope to visit with you soon in a care coordinator office hour. And as always, you can email us at sdstraining@alaska.gov. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.